Space, the final frontier. Well, okay, not really. All right, take two. Here in the Mitten State, welcome to Code 47, bringing you all things Star Trek, spanning the quadrants, the best thing since the neutral zone.
Back again in real time with the Code 47 podcast on the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. After a whole month of being off because of Star Trek Las Vegas, even though my wife April and I, who did attend, one of my guests also attended. We jumped in and did a little bit on that, but that doesn't count. That's not what you tune in for. You tune in for a bunch of talking heads to talk about nerd stuff. That would be Star Trek. This is episode number 106. I am Charlie Carden, your Trek Lord of West Michigan, Captain Commodore of the USS Grand Petoskey in Region 13 of Starfleet International. I am joined by my esteemed colleagues at my extreme left. That would be Lieutenant Commander Missy Merchant. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone.
And in the center square would be Lieutenant Peter Stein.
Hello.
And all the way to the right would be, without rank so far, Jen Watson from Chicago. Good evening.
Hi.
Oh my goodness. Well, it is really great to be back. And again, we took that kind of necessary break while Missy and our friend Kay and then April and I were all out enjoying Star Trek Las Vegas. And we're back here. Yeah, we're back. Yes, we're back here doing this thing. We're going to be talking about now Star Trek Stranger Worlds has concluded, but for the sake of stretching out content, we're not going to be talking about the season finale or the final two episodes. We're going to be talking about the two episodes prior to that, and then we'll be launching into wrapping up, concluding, I should say, talking about season 3 of Star Trek Enterprise. But without further ado, we would be nowhere in our overall Secret Friends Unite podcasting network without the great support of our Patreons, one of whom is on this very program. Oh my goodness. The Patreons are folks who do give us their financial support that gives us the opportunity to make additional great content. If you visit patreon.com/secretfriendsunite, you can get a free full week of listening to our shows. And then if you choose to stay on board, we would love that too. Want to give some love and respect on our BFF level to the Nias family, Sean, Stella, and Henry. And my friend Missy Merchant, who happens to be right here on this program, is one of our Patreons, and her pal Andy Milliken, as well as dear friend Jamie Prinky. So we are very grateful for all of that support. Keep on keeping on. Again, patreon.com/Secret Friends Unite, free 1-week trial to check out some of our fun content. So, okay, we actually have a news story. Several things obviously came out of Star Trek Las Vegas. Some people like Robert Beltran who were shooting their mouth off. We don't need to talk about that. But I would love to talk about the fact that we did get a clip from the currently homeless Star Trek Prodigy season 2. This was a pleasant surprise. In the clip, which we've all had a chance to check out, it's obviously out there on the internet, does show the former crew of the Protostar somebody's dropping something. The former crew of the Protostar hanging out on Earth, but a shuttlecraft comes overhead, and out steps our beloved Robert Picardo as the emergency hologram. There we go. New outfit because apparently all this time, that's all he had to do. And he flies them up to their new ride, I haven't watched the clip and all that. It's the ship's still called the Voyager, right? They're getting on the new Voyager?
Yeah.
Voyager A. Yes, a new giant ship with a huge crew. They're doing the fly around just like we saw in that first episode of Voyager, that you get the little tutorial flying around the ship. This was great, but to me, very bittersweet, because this is a show that we don't know when and if we're going to get to watch it. Because again, I was talking about this over the weekend with some of our friends in the fan club chapter that we run when we were having our in-person meeting. Excited for the show, but it has to be sold to somebody. And right now, because of the combined strike, companies are burning through money. I don't know that anybody can afford to purchase this. So I don't know, but anyway, I was excited. What's the impressions, Jen? What'd you think?
I thought it was cool. It's great to see the Doctor again. It's great to see Voyager again. It's great to see Prodigy again. I love Prodigy. I might be in the minority here, but
Oh,
I
not at
really
all.
enjoy it. I think it's a great show. It's great for kids. And I'm just really sad that it's not on Paramount right now. And I can't wait for it to come back.
I know, Peter. Jog my memory. We haven't talked Prodigy in a while. Where do you land?
I liked Prodigy.
I
Everyone likes to stick me
Okay.
in the disliker, but I
yeah,
liked Prodigy.
yeah. No, it's good, but again, just very bittersweet because we just don't know
Yeah.
when we're.
I was slightly sad only because I was hoping for a different character. When it was like a new character appears, I was like, "Ooh, is it Lieutenant Kim?" No.
No,
Ooh, that would have been cool.
I know.
So I'm
It's-
I'm over the moon to see the Doctor, but I was like, "Oh, no, Lieutenant Kim. That would have been fun."
I know.
He'll
I know.
probably show up later. But,
I know. Hopefully they
Fingers
all.
crossed.
Yeah, I was gonna say even though they're going to rescue Chakotay at this point, they might just leave him there. Like I got himself into. Oh, and again we don't really need to dig too deep into that. Missy, you talked Prodigy with us in the past? I can't remember now.
Very briefly, I guess I'll be the minority in that it's not my favorite.
That's cool. I can dig
but
it.
but I was excited to see the Doctor show up. For the sake of Star Trek, I appreciate it in that aspect that it is good for the kids. And I hope that having more of these little teasers of like, okay, we have Janeway, now we have the Doctor, who else can we have in there, might make some old Trek fan that has a boatload of money actually pick it up.
some billionaire, some Bruce Wayne out there who's going to be like, and I like Star Trek and I fight crime. Yes, we'll see if that turns up. So anyway, as news on that continues to evolve, obviously you will hear that from us, not only here, but of course on all of our social media feeds for the Secret Friends Unite network. All right, let's move into talking about Strange New Worlds. We're going to be tackling episodes 7 and 8, episodes 9 and 10, which will wrap up the season, is what we will be talking about next time. And that will actually lead us right into Lower Decks when we get into the month of September. So very, very excited about that. Peter, why don't you kick us off? And I'm wearing my Ritos tee. Woo! There, that's my dress up.
I was
Peter,
giving you my sassy Vulcan salute.
there you go.
So
Yeah, jump us on into episode.
in
7.
honor of what this episode doesn't do. Episode 7, Those Old Scientists.
POS.
An accident while investigating a time portal sends Ensigns Beckett Mariner and Brad Boimler, though not at the same time, through time from the 24th century, and Captain Pike and his crew must get them back where they belong before they can alter the timeline irrevocably.
All right. Well, Peter, since you do the reading, you can jump right back in with your impressions of this episode.
This episode was fantastic. I thoroughly enjoyed the animated elements that they brought into it, the opener with the crew, but also the opening titles where they lower decksified the
Yes.
Yeah,
World's opening titles.
totally awesome.
My brother and I were sitting there laughing at the space slug catching on fire. It was
The fully fleshed out koala right at the end, that was pretty
yes,
great.
I think that's a joke that maybe they should take a break from, but it was funny.
It worked out. Oh, I'm thinking
was-
I think Burning Space Slub can be an early favorite for
So
the name of the episode.
I really, really enjoyed how Jack Quaid brought in all of the animated mannerisms of Boimler. Like he really, like, to the point of like the hand gestures and everything. It was really, really well done translating these characters from animation to live action. The overall, the plot was, pretty good. I think that the Uhura plot was a little weak. Simply because it felt like this was something that they foisted on the character simply to have an interaction between her and Mariner.
Could be. I can see that.
Mostly because, like, in the episode previous and a couple other times we've seen her let off steam and do things for fun, and then it's like, oh, she's all about work. It's like, that's not how you've been writing the character for the last season and a half, so it just doesn't really drive terribly well.
Kind of a sitcom-y toss in.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
It worked. It was fun, but it just was a little odd for me. I know everyone's anticipating me saying this. The Spock bits are very off-putting for me.
He's too smiley. I know.
I appreciated Boimler's comments. I thought many of them. And so, but yeah, so it worked. And having the Orions was a fun little twist, and bringing in a TOS version of an Orion ship from what we've seen in the background from the remastered stuff was pretty great.
Yeah, totally.
So the one other missed thing that I think was when they had Pike talking with Mariner and Boimler. They were speaking in way too many vagaries, even though he made it very clear that he knew it was going to happen.
Yeah.
So, that's a stylistic choice.
Yeah.
But overall, solid episode.
Rock and roll. Missy.
It was one of my favorites, probably one that I've laughed the most at. Having met Jack Quaid at Mission Chicago last year, he really is Boimler. Like, you just so chat with him, and that's just who he is.
Yeah.
So it does translate really well from the animation to the live action, which I very much appreciate. And I really, probably my favorite part was his arc throughout this episode of him trying to fight himself and his own nature. Of he essentially gets to live his dream, his fantasy of going back and meeting his heroes, but then he can't do what he normally wants to do. And he also has to fight his disappointment. And like, I really thought this was going to be different. And now I have to let them help me figure out how to not fuck it up, basically.
Right. Never meet your heroes, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
No, I really do like that. Boimler's my favorite lower decker, and I really, really was happy to get to see this. And I think it'll translate to a lot of growth for his character when we get to see the next season of next month.
Here's hope.
Here's hoping. You better believe it. All right, Jen, if you can come back to us. Let's have you.
I cannot remember the last time I've been this delighted with a Star Trek episode. It was just completely delightful.
Right.
I loved it start to finish. The animated sections at the beginning and at the end, when we had the Stranger New Worlds crew animated as well, was really cool. I couldn't stop laughing. I mean, it was Lower Decks and it was Strange New Worlds, and I love both of these shows, and it's two great tastes that taste great together. So
your chocolate and your peanut butter.
Yeah, exactly. So I had a lot of fun with this. There's too many things to reference that I think my favorite of the jokes was the Riker, as Boimler is
like
just
Kobe.
Kind of, yeah, and I'm like. And the best part is Jonathan Frakes directed this episode, so he was right there when Jack Quaid improvised that line. So it was so much fantastic.
Meta.
Yeah. I mean, as a Spock Chapel shipper, I was kind of disappointed by the whole thing in the elevator. Obviously, I know that this isn't going to work out, but I can have fun in the meantime. And that was just this like. I was disappointed for her. I was sad.
Yeah.
I was hoping that we'd get a little bit more time with this ship before it sank, but it is what it is.
It was. I mean, it was doomed from the jump because again.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we're a prequel, but we are set apart by 5 years, and
Mm-hmm.
we know that they've even made allusions to the fact that in season 3 we're going to meet Roger Corby, who is Chapel's eventual fiance, who ends up being a robot guy. Oh, whoops! Spoiler from 1966. Sorry, but I was just beyond delighted having spent actual time with Tawny Newsome. I mean, I was on stage with her on the cruise doing a comedy skit. I was the first person she bumped into when she was getting on the ship in Mexico, which she referenced when April and I saw her in line at Star Trek Las Vegas. She said, "I remember you guys from the cruise. I was carrying so many illegal drugs when I met you guys," and we just peeled off. That is really who she is in real life. She's a Second City comedian. She's from your hometown of Chicago,
Yeah.
Jen. She is just a stitch. What a wonderfully wonderful human being. There is no acting when she's Mariner. She's just Mariner. And I mean that in a complimentary fashion. And to see her translate that wonderful style to spending time with Celia Rose Gooding, even then
Mhm.
again, if we're kind of bouncy about what who her character is like, you're right. Finding her, oh, she's super studious and super serious. That's not the way the character was ever portrayed, in TOS that I can think of it, or in the films. But as Peter said, for the moment, it was kind of a sitcom-y moment. It was the Simpsons have a dog for the purpose of this episode, or they have a cat, or they have a badger or something. It fit the moment of the gag. So they nailed it. It was great as a one-off. The stakes were relatively low, but because obviously the things are going to go on. I love the portrayal of kind of dancing around number one's character, and Boimler is super awkward around her because he idolizes
That was
her, and
fantastic.
she just can't figure it out. But when she does find out, she says, "Oh, there's a poster. It's a pinup." She says, "It's a
I
poster
don't want
that's
to
pinned
know.
up. Are we talking about the same thing here? I don't want to know." But she's genuinely touched when she finds out that she is basically an icon for Starfleet, seen 125 years later. So I love that, loving the number one character as I do. So this was in a lot of cases, and again we'll be getting into talking about Star Trek Enterprise, the unceremonious end of that show, which was called a love letter to the fans, when we truly know that the end of Enterprise was a middle finger to the fans. This was a love letter to the fans. This was, we see you, we love you, and please enjoy this. It hit all the notes. It hit all the notes for me. So I was happy. So
No, that's next week.
yeah. Oh well, we'll
We'll,
and by the way,
we'll talk
Jen,
about those.
you did score episode title name, Two Great Tastes That Taste Great Together is
Oh, yay.
now the name of this episode. All right. Well, we are going from the comically fun to the extraordinarily dour and serious. And Missy is going to tip us off after I read the lead in. Episode 8 is Under the Cloak of War. Captain Pike and his crew welcome a Klingon defector aboard the USS Enterprise, but his presence triggers the revelation of some shocking secrets. Missy.
Wow. So much going on in this episode. Kay and I, at our Psychology of Star Trek panel in Las Vegas, actually included clips from this with the references to PTSD, both with Christine and with Dr. Mbenga, more so with him. It's the literal embodiment of what wartime PTSD would look like. Being confronted with somebody that you were, an enemy against in battle, having the immediate dissociations, the callbacks with phrases, with medical equipment. It it brought tears for all of the right reasons because it was so clinically accurate, and you can't help but understand more about where both of them are coming from when they're dealing with various situations, with loss, with grief, with having to be in that situation. I mean, they were medics in these different Klingon war battles, and to be able to like move forward with a medical career and still deal with people that are coming in injured from various different things and be able to separate the two is huge.
Yeah.
I really appreciated that. I liked that we got to know more about Mbenga's character arc with what was kind of, to me, a big shocker at the end with his reveal. Um, I was not expecting that. I will say that
Yeah.
much.
No doubt.
But also, as like a throwback, what also, because Discovery, obviously my favorite, nobody's shocked at this point if you listen to any of this.
Yeah.
What I was thinking during the middle of this episode is this actually gives a lot more ground level credit to Michael Burnham's actions in season 1 of Discovery when she initiated the Klingon Wars. Because in season 1, it's kind of an underlying theme of like, yeah, we started the thing, I killed the Klingon warriors, and now we have to make this new ship so we can fight it.
Yeah.
But then this is like, no, this is what actual people were doing because of Michael starting the Klingon Wars. So that really hit me as like, okay, this is actually the fallout from Discovery season 1.
Totally. And yeah, from that, there was that big chunk of Discovery season 1 where they, got skirted off the Mirror Universe and they came back home, but they missed this big chunk of the war. And it was, we're back and we lost the war because they were hanging on by a thread. So, this was powerful without a doubt. In any war film where you see this kind of, it was a MASH. It was a surgical hospital. And even though MASH was, an 11-year long sitcom about a 3-year long police action in Korea in the 1950s, they did stick their toe in the serious from time to time, but it was a sitcom. So there were still, laughs with Alan Alda saying, the punchline, you didn't see blood spurting everywhere and, people with their organs falling out and stuff. And that's as real gets. Even, as humanity goes to the stars, we'll make bigger and uglier weapons and find ways to make war, get made with us. And Star Trek exists for this kind of commentary. And, it's incredible to hear from somebody of your professional ilk that they got it right. So that just goes to prove that, I said it from the jump because I did get a screener of this season and I got to watch the first 6 in a row. And I was not teasing you guys for teasing purposes, but I'm saying, guys, season 1 was great, but this puts everything to bed. This entire season blows me away. Jen.
So if I had a nickel for every time in the past week that I watched a bright, delightful, self-referential comedy about finding one's identity amidst heavy expectations, featuring characters from 2 different worlds meeting, followed up by an introspective, cinematic, and sort of depressing piece about the horrors of war and personal responsibility that flashed back and forth between time periods, I'd have 2 nickels, which is in the lot, but it's really weird that it's happened twice, because the Lower Decks episode and this Lower Decks crossover, and then this episode happened kind of around the same weekend as Barbenheimer. And
oh God, you're right. Gee.
Yeah. So I'm like, wow, this like kind of whiplash of it's really similar. So like I felt at the end of this episode the same way that I felt walking out of Oppenheimer, which was like, I want to watch Barbie again. I want to watch the Lower Decks episode again.
And get back to my happy place, yeah.
Yeah, but I think that stories like this definitely need to be told. It reminded me also a lot of the Siege of AR 559, whatever, the Deep Space Nine episode, where it's so heavy and so realistic, but such an important story to tell.
Yeah.
And you don't really know what's happening with Mbenga. The fight that happens with him and the Klingon ambassador at near the end, like it's behind a screen, like that is under the cloak of war. Like that is the name of the episode, and it's happening. You don't. It's not clear. Who did start it? Like, is this guy goading Mbenga to kill him so that he can then die with honor and go to Sto-Vo-Kor because it's in a personal combat, because he feels guilty? Or, there's all of these questions about guilt and responsibility and, of course, the PTSD aspect of it as well. Which is not to say that I disliked this episode. I liked it very, very much. But it was heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Heavy like a thump. My goodness. No, I agree. Peter.
I did not like this episode. I'll just say that straight off the gate. For me, the depiction of the PTSD was fine. I'm not going to quibble with that there. But for me, the resolution was much like how I made a comment about Elysian Kingdom in season 1, where the rest of the episode is great, but I wasn't a fan of the resolution. I didn't like the resolution of this one. If only because of the whiplash. between the two episodes.
Yeah.
You end with Mbenga in the previous episode going, "What the hell is in this thing?" very comically, and then in this episode, we are now dealing with, at least my read of it, perhaps justified, but this is more or less unambiguously Mbenga just killing this guy. That was my read on it. Now I hear everyone else's read on it.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to your opinion. Everyone has a different read on the episode.
As are we all. Yes, that's what we're doing here.
But
yeah.
for me, it was this painted Mbenga in a very bad light, to me. And also it also made me think of, hey, this is why we have counselors on starships. Because this is clearly trauma that has not been dealt with in any way. And also Mbenga keeping the secret that he was the butcher. That's a war crime. And you probably should be in New Zealand for that.
Yeah.
Regardless. Getting help, right? But you should be in New Zealand. And so it was also interesting how Chapel seemed to be much better put together on it. Like, she still had her issues, but she was handling it much better than Mbenga was. And so just for me, it was a very interesting and strange take. Part of it might be I just don't like the grim darkness that Discovery went for in season 1, and this was a throwback to that. And I'm not a fan of grim dark Star Trek as much as I love Deep Space Nine. It's just not what I prefer, and I don't mind touching on dark and important stories and like stuff that deals with heavy subject matter, but there's a way to do it, and I don't think necessarily that this hit the right notes with resolving character stories in a way that was helpful. I don't know if that makes sense, but it didn't seem to be terribly helpful to me. On a side note, I did like the cameo at the beginning. That was fun. And I thought it was interesting how there has been some retconning of technology. But yeah, overall, not the biggest fan of how this played out. The Klingon ambassador was just a very strange take.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that part. At least I thought he was a very strange character. And that actor on the tip of my tongue, because I feel like I've seen him in other things, but just has a very
he did a great job.
Yeah, familiar vibe. Yeah, it was all incredibly well acted. But again, the thing that I took the most out of it, and again, being in Vegas and listening to Missy and Kay go through what they did, I took on such a great appreciation for the depth of that performance and for the quality of the writing that was built around it. But I found that to be so much more impactful than I'm kind of both ways. I wasn't crazy about the ending of it, just watching this guy go to Mbenga until he ended up stabbing him, and at the end of it, I mean, I don't. It's really tough because we have our 3 core characters who are involved in the war, and we haven't really seen the depth of how Ortegas was affected. But that is that is potential story beat yet to come. Yeah, a lot of threads left unresolved, but I love seeing, and one of the things Star Trek really does best is speak to our own humanity under the cloak of what have you, under the cloak of whatever kind of story we're telling. So pretty powerful stuff, without a doubt. And then the absolute quantum shift that we get in the next episode is I'm with Peter about the whiplash bit. It's Ted Nugent's whiplash bash of Star Trek is, I would change it to that, but that that's a little too Michigan to make that to make that the name of this episode. We'll take a pass on that. I like what John
I don't even get that reference, and I'm from here. So.
I know. Well,
grief.
It's just oh god, yeah.
You're not redneck enough.
Yeah, I was gonna say I walk the line of that, but yeah, that's a very redneck reference to redneck rock ding dong Ted Nugent. Sorry if I'm offending anybody. But anyway,
can I be indulged for one more little psych nerd point that
Absolutely, you can.
Please.
So, not disagreeing with the resolution, I don't think that Mbenga's arc had to have this essentially blatant murder involved in it.
Yeah.
But it also kind of tied back in. It was very subtle, and probably to people not in my profession or like any kind of psych nerd inclined, it actually did hark back to like the World War II obedience studies that were done, as far as kind of investigating if normal people, when put in stressful situations, would do things up to and including torturing and killing people without necessarily having a just personal cause. And they actually did determine that like 78% of the normal American population, if put under stressful situation, would cause harm or death to another person for their own safety.
Wow. Yeah,
So,
it's actually not something that I knew about. So that is
Wow.
it's staggering, but it's, knowing the ugliness that exists within humanity that gives us world wars and genocide and things of that nature. It's not at all surprising. Wow. Well, guys, this is some heavy stuff, and after the pause here, we're going to jump into as much heavy as Enterprise was able to give us. So, guys, thank you for this, and again, we promise a little bit more happiness next week. Even though we had a crazy episode, and then we had kind of a heavy episode in the season, but we are going to bid adieu to Missy while Jen and Peter and I stay on board to take you through the end of season 3 of Enterprise. Missy, where do people find you out there in the world?
I'm on the socials, mostly on Instagram at MamaMerch33.
Excellent. Very good. We will pause for station identification and we will be right back. Thank you for that brief commercial interruption, and I say that being that there's no commercial interruption. But we are back to take us through the end of season 3 of Star Trek Enterprise. This is the end of a long road. From getting from there to here. That was the first really multi-part season-long, season-long arc that we had in Star Trek of any kind. And like any long form back in the day, hey, we got 24 episodes, we got 26 episodes. No matter what, you're still going to have wasted segments, and it's not that we don't get a few here that you're like, But we had some good ones. So, and Jen, this is, I know that you homeworked up so you could join us for this. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, no problem.
Because otherwise it's just me and Peter saying, well, I think, and we're all doing the same thing. So it's good to have that. So, all right. Well, we have the last 6. So without further ado, I will read the first one, and then we'll just go down the line. Everybody gets to read one, and the person who read it gets to talk first. So I'll start off with episode 19 of the season, Damage, or Damage if you prefer. Written by James L. Conway, directed by James L. Conway. Writer is Phil Strong. From April of 2004. The Enterprise, miraculously escaping the big shootout that happened last season, is absolutely falling apart. Exactly what Voyager should have looked like throughout most of that show. Basically, think about like Battlestar Galactica. So the Enterprise is now heavily damaged, and they need to seek a warp coil from an alien vessel that doesn't want to give it up. And the main alien is Casey Biggs, who is Damar. So you don't really feel bad when they have to rough him up a little bit.
No.
This is, it's a trope of Star Trek. In a lot of ways, it's a trope of any, it's time to make the impossible decision. One of my favorite shows I've talked about all the time that was airing at this time was 24 over on Fox. And every episode was that it's an impossible decision. We have to do this thing and put this person's life on the line, or I've got a split second and these people might be gassed or nuked or something, or blah, blah, blah. So this was, we're dying, but our ship is falling apart. We've lost 18 people. Everything's being held together with spit and bubblegum and twine. And if we don't get this warp coil and we can't get a warp engine back, we'll have no chance of continuing with our mission, which is vital to the survival of our species. So Damar and you little alien dipshits, too bad. If we can come over there and pop you one, you can still, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. You can get home. Being that this, this is a prequel and we're functioning outside of really the Federation and just Earth Starfleet and having to we'll have a rule someday. a directive, the first directive, the most important directive. What was that again? I forgot what I was talking about. I think they played it well, and again, I've said this in Voyager every so often, you get the episode where Janeway's like, I'm going to go crazy, but then I'm going to bring it back to it. And then Chakotay's going to talk me off a ledge. And there was no ledge talking on this one. Just they kind of did what they had to do. Nobody died that we know of.
A full eagle jumped off of that.
Yeah, exactly. Woo! So, I feel like they did what they had to do. And in Archer's place, would I do anything different? I mean, there were no rules when when your planet is going to get nuked and everybody's going to die. I mean, we saw what really, if things would have moved forward like that in the episode Twilight, we kind of saw that's how things would have gone. If he didn't take the step. So, I'm totally on Team Archer on this one, so I don't know. Jen, what do you think?
I understand that there were circumstances here, but I think Archer was just way over the edge in this one, and I think he kind of continues to be kind of over the edge for sort of the rest of the season, more or less. So I didn't agree with him at all, but I do think that karma came back for him in one of these later episodes, which we'll talk about later. But
oh boy, yeah, he did get his more than once.
Yeah, so I think that the damage can refer to the ship, or it could refer to Archer himself, because he is kind of beyond that moral point at this point, where he is just going, we got to do what we got to do to get the mission done for the sake of humanity, and it is a rough spot for him to be in. I would like to think that I would not make that decision if I were in his position, but I don't actually know. So I mean, there's other things that are damaged at this point too. I know that T'Pol's dealing with some stuff too with her trillium addiction, so she's dealing with some damage for herself as well. So everyone's damaged. Everyone needs.
Everybody needs a big hug at the end of this episode.
Yeah,
There's no
for
doubt
sure.
about it. This was the big hug episode, without a doubt. Well, Peter, you are one of the bigger Enterprise guys that I know, and I know you love Archer. So was he a little too Jack Bauer in this? Was he just like, forget it, I'm just going to do whatever?
Yeah, we'll probably get more into it when we get to season 4, but there is a turning point for Archer for me where he gets really bitter and angry, and this I think is the beginning of it, if not like the exact turning point,
right?
Where he suddenly is. This is where we see Archer be absolutely desperate.
Yeah, big time.
He's free, because it's like, if we don't have this warp coil, we're not going to be able to meet Dager. We're not going to be able to find the weapon, and we're just going to be shit out of luck.
Yeah, big time.
And so there's a clock ticking down. He's like, Earth's going to blow up, and so he is literally losing his mind about this. And he's losing his mind over this. T'Pol is losing her mind because of Trellium.
Trip's not sleeping, and
Trip is his own trip, so
yeah. Trip is on his own trip.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, maybe he should do a little of that Trellium. That might straighten his ass.
No, that probably would make it worse.
No, he's already hallucinating. He doesn't need any more.
Yeah, he doesn't need more. So, this is one of those situations where, in times of war, I understand why he did what he did. I do not think it was the moral thing to do, but at the same time, in the words of our inimitable Vulcan, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. He didn't have an option, and he kind of had to. And there's part of this where you can see that that's torturing him. He doesn't want to leave someone out here. You see some of that back and forth with a few people, but overall he's just we have to do this, and he hardens himself, and he embitters himself to just callously deal with this, which he has to, but it sucks for the character. And I think, to your point, I think that's part of what this episode is referring to, is the self-inflicted damage Archer has to do to himself to put the safety of Earth first before even his own good, and those around him, obviously, with stranding the Illyrian ship. But yeah, so this is a good episode, but it's tough.
Yeah, very tough. Yeah, just pushed to the brink, and what choice do we have? Big time. Cool. All right, Peter, why don't you take us into episode 20?
All right, episode 20. Oh, I was hoping to talk about the next one. Okay.
Oh, you'll
Episode
get
20, The Forgotten. Directed by none other than LeVar Burton himself.
there. Woo!
Written by Chris Black and David A. Goodman. Captain Archer deals with the loss of 18 crew members and continues negotiations with 2 of the 5 Xindi species. So we have continued fallout from the Enterprise getting beat to hell.
Right.
With more things blowing up and people dying.
Right. Well, they can't swing into Starbase and be like, "Hey, slap a fresh coat of paint on this bad boy." There's nowhere for them to go.
No,
I mean,
they're
they're
in
probably,
this expanse. There's nothing.
Yeah.
There's nothing there. It's an expanse of emptiness. That's why.
yeah, and they don't have replicators, so they're lucky that they probably still have food and water. With the ship blown up as bad as it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So like we have this whole struggle with death. We have T'Pol now dealing with emotions. Like a Vulcan dealing with emotions.
Got me feeling emotions.
So this may be part of where I have sometimes a problem with how Vulcans are portrayed with emotions.
Well, when you're sucking on that trillium pipe,
it's
kind of crack. Really,
it's completely understandable in this situation, but it's handled very interestingly.
Yeah.
And appropriately, Phlox talks about the genie in the bottle. Like you kind of popped the cork, and now this is what's going to happen.
Here comes Robin Williams. Blah, blah. Why? No, it's not that happy.
Just not nearly that fun.
Yeah.
We wish. So we get more justification of, like, we get a little bit more of Degra and Archer talking with another Xindi about how, like, the Xindi are trying to, like, justify their own actions. Why did we build the weapon? And so it's like, we're built it for defense, but then, you have this somewhat rational discussion going on, and then Trip just busts in like, you vaporized everybody and my sister was there. Like, reasonable, right? It happened.
He kind of does go Kermit. You're right. He's like, he was for sure a little over the top.
He's on fire at that moment, and it's completely understandable. Like, I'm not gonna say like people don't blow up without reason. Like it does happen, but you see where like a lot of that hurt, a lot of that anger in the crew that we've seen like building from episode 1 of the season just occasionally just bursts out. We saw it happen in Archer in the last episode, and in this episode we see it kind of the dam breaks and Trip just like loses it at Degra and the other Xindi.
Well, I mean, he's been trying to keep it together for so long.
He has been trying to keep it together for like the whole year.
Yeah, it's not working. No, you can only keep it together for so long.
Right. And he's dealing and this is like some pretty serious trauma. Like he was close to his sister, and it's just like, and now he's face to face with the people who like designed and deployed this damn thing.
Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly.
It's like coming to face with like your sibling's murderer. Like that's rough.
Very true.
They didn't literally pull the trigger, but they may as well have.
Yeah.
That's how Trip reacts.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of interesting stuff here. We get a confrontation between the Enterprise and the Xindi, and the Enterprise gets damaged and runs away. So we get the next episode. But there's a lot of emotion, a lot of stuff being handled in this episode, and I think this episode, in kind of a bottle way, handles it pretty well. And I know some people are going to remind me of like other things I've said about Strange New Worlds, where I don't like how some of the episode is all about emotion. I don't like it dragged out. This handles it in a kind of a bottle way, and I think it was pretty well done. And yes, the emotions continue through the rest of the season, and they've been going from the beginning of the season, but it doesn't always blow up in different ways. So anyway.
Yes. All right, Jen.
Someone else.
I don't really have anything to add, actually. I think that sums up a lot of my viewpoints on this one too. It's everything that's been going on so far with this season is really, I mean, we are getting into the home stretch here with this last run of episodes. So stuff that has been building for so long, whether it's, Trip dealing with the loss of his sister, Archer kind of on this edge of reason here, and T'Pol with her addiction, like everything is just ready to explode. And in this one it does.
Beaver
So,
pitch. Yeah, big
yeah.
time. Big time with so much more to come. Yeah, I agree. The emotions coming from other sides, all sides, and then yeah, the big three. This was the episode, and again, I ended up watching these a little further back than recently, just because we've been off for so long. But this was the episode where is this the episode where Trip is tasked with writing the letter about his non-com?
Yes.
Yeah, so
Yep.
he's trying to write this letter about this young woman, and he's like, well, I barely knew she was on, but she was like a crewman third class, so she was just a kid.
On like Gamma Shift, like
Yeah, barely knew her, and is like, well, he was on my guy's team. No, I asked you to write this letter, and he's like, and it does, force him to hold the mirror up and really think about, what will my words mean to her parents? What will that sound like? Whether they knew that I barely knew her at all, for me to turn around and say, she gave it all to save humanity, because she did, even though she, got blown out a hole in the ship. So it's not like she jumped in front of a Zindi whipping, but she's just as dead. The same way that all the 7 million people back on Earth are just as dead, who are just, sitting there drinking your morning coffee. She was there to save humanity, and through her sacrifice and the sacrifice of the other 17 people, the ship was able to get as far as they did. So
I do like, if I can just interject, that
Please.
the writing of that letter is a way for Trip to come to terms with the death of his sister in that
Big time.
point as well, because he's writing what does he want to hear.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Yep.
So it's an absolute moment of growth for him. So absolutely excellent stuff. Okay, so now we shift gears into I don't know if I want to call it a filler episode, but it's one of these, the episode 20 ends with Degra saying, meet me at this spot in 3 days, and it's on the other side of this dangerous nebula. And so, Jen, tell us about episode 21.
Episode 21 is E Squared, directed by Roxanne Dawson, and written by Mike Sussman. Airs May 5th, 2004. The Enterprise crew meet their own descendants from an alternate timeline in the past. So we have this anomaly that the Enterprise gets sucked into in the past. They wind up like 100 years or so into the past, and they find that this ship is full of their descendants, and it's a potential sort of timeline for what could happen for them. I think it's interesting. It is another interesting step in the T'Pol and Trip of it all, where they're seeing this like, oh, in an alternate timeline, we could be together. You don't want to admit you got feelings for me. So that's cool to see that sort of starting. But overall, I thought the episode was fine. It has some interesting character beats, but it does sort of take us out of the arc right now.
Yeah. It's kind of a my road is closed, so here's a detour.
Yeah, it's a breath though. You need to take a breath between, you can't just sort of barrel into everything. So
Right. Like, like they kind of are doing, with Strange New Worlds. We got a high and a low and a high and a low, and then we, end on quite a low. There was a better version of this episode, and it was called The Children of Time on Deep Space Nine.
Yep.
Which I really dug, and it was the same thing. It forced, in that case, it forced Kira to start to understand that Odo's always loved her, because she meets a much older version of him, and again they're meeting their descendants, and it's like, there was no doubt that Archer was going to move forward, and hey, it's fun to entertain that you guys are our descendants and blah blah blah, but we don't have time for this bullshit. We got to go. But the alternate history people, they still want to find a way to stay alive, but they've they basically got to fight the school bullies who are around the end of the terminus of this thing that they got to get out of. But yeah, while the overall, the guy who played Trip and T'Pol's son was on a dumb show that I like to call Jag. It's a Donald Belisario show. He played the head dude in the last couple of seasons of that show, a Marine Corps general. So he was the general, not wearing the funny little hat like in those insurance commercials. But you got some nice moments with Trip. You got some nice moments with super old T'Pol talking to young Spawn like, well, you're really going to need him, and he can help you out, and wink, 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 it makes it even more disappointing that at the end of the series, in that horrible final episode we get,
I don't know
Trip
what you're
is called.
talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Just do, 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 do. We'd like to believe that
Doesn't
it ends with
exist.
demons. It doesn't exist. It's a thing. It's you. That they never get together. It's just it's a big fu. But we don't need to jump that far ahead. But yeah, it was like you said. It was a blip in the road. It got us through the rift, and then it gets us into the next episode. So, Peter, any thoughts on this quasi forgettable episode?
I enjoyed this episode mostly because of the weird time shenanigans and the way that the ship was different. Some of the things are, brought into the next season for the other NX ship that you see later.
Yeah, the big columns. That are on the Columbia. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, there's some interesting stuff. There's, like, a lot of talk of guilt in this episode, which is another thing that continues. Where you have, like, they're guilty about the fact that that they couldn't stop the weapon, either because they got thrown in the past, or because they couldn't stop the first one because now they're in the past and they weren't able to stop it then. So it's interesting to see how that all plays out. I did think it was kind of cool how they played on the fact that it's the exact same ship, and so it appears as a sensor echo. That was fun.
Right.
How they used that
was
to their advantage.
like, hey, we've seen it. How many ships are out here? Because they think it's just another NX.
Yeah, and then the sensor echo starts shooting at them. You're like, that was fun.
Hello.
So there's some good stuff in this episode. It is, like, as you say, it is kind of a just let's take a breather and do something that's a little dumb. So yeah, but I enjoy this episode. I kind of keep watching it whenever it shows up because I like all the random stuff in it with old T'Pol and Lorian and Trip trying to figure out how the heck he's supposed to deal with a child who's older than he is.
Yeah. I'm gonna put you over my knee, old man. Yeah, exactly.
It's just hilarious because Trip is like this very, like, we have this certain way of doing things, and like, but you're older than me. How am I supposed to deal with it? Like, it's just hilarious. So I enjoy this episode. Is it amazing? No, but I like it.
It's fun.
Exactly. It is, and like you said, it's a good bump in the road, and at the end of it, it was great, but it was what Star Trek does, particularly in your classic era, where you had it's like North Star earlier this season. I love that episode. Didn't have anything to do with anything, but it was the Old West, and it was fun, and I dug
North
it.
Star is great, but North Star also has some good Star Trek elements in there. And
yeah,
so
exactly.
does this one. So.
Our horse broke down outside of town.
Well, that too.
All right. So the last 3 episodes are pretty much a 3-parter. So let's do this. I will blast through reading these summaries, and then we will just kind of talk about it as one big organic globule. So we have the Council plus Countdown plus 0 Hour. Our director is David Livingston, Robert Duncan McNeil, Robbie McDunk, Robbie McD. He always calls himself on the Delta Flyers, and Alan Croker, who is again a heritage director. And then we have Manny Cotto, Andre Boreamis, Chris Black, and then Berman and Braga as the writing team of these 3. So we have Archer and the gang reaching the Xindi Council, having a long, drawn-out conversation where we find out that not surprising, the insectoids and the reptilians really don't give a shit what Archer has to say. They really have a boner on to blow up Earth. So they're just like, you know what? He's lying. I don't really care what he's saying. And we're just, we're going to go off on our own anyway. And they break out. Archer gets slapped around a little bit, but he moves forward with bringing the aquatics onto their side, and the aquatics are the very stoic, well thought out. Takes 100 years for them to figure out how to make a decision, but they do eventually win them over. But in the time in between, the reptilians capture Hoshi because they can use drugs to make her hack the codes, because all 5 Xindi species have their own set of codes, and that's how they agree to get the weapon. Only in agreement can the weapon be activated. So they drug Hoshi, they get her to give her the codes, but of course she gets rescued in the appropriate requisite time and back on the ship. We start to see in these final couple episodes that not only are we pursuing to finish off the Zindi, but then we're also pursuing to deal with the Sphere Builders, which is the real, honest to God villain of the season, because it's a Emperor Palpatine level fake out that we'll get them to kill the Earth people, but then we'll get them to kiss our butt, and then we'll steal all their space and kill them all so that we can live in your universe. Which you never, forgive me if I'm wrong, do we ever figure out why they want to live in our realm so bad? I mean, is it kind of like Wall-E and there's garbage all over their planet and they're like, we got to find a new place to go?
If I'm remembering correctly, it's not terribly well defined, but it is kind of a, we're low on resources, I mean, it could simply be like an analog to, we need more breathing room.
Right.
Earth Hitler.
Yeah, I got the impression it was just a conquest sort of
that's
thing.
kind of more what they were going for, I think, rather than, because as you say, kind of an Emperor Palpatine vibe. They don't. Yeah. You don't always have to have sympathetic villains. Sometimes a villain is just a villain. And that's it.
They want to take over the space because they want to take over the space because they want to take over the space. It's just this tautology of zero reason for. They're just the expansionist,
It's the space alien that needs a mustache to twirl. There's no doubt about it. We get to the finale, which I absolutely love. It's action-packed. You get my great Archer, cool guys walk away from explosions, but in this case, he's running. Because in the end, I love how he finally deals with Dolom and click, boom. That was my favorite piece as well. But I'm going to save my thoughts for what happens after the jump by kicking it back to Peter first and foremost. How did you like how we wrap things up?
I thoroughly enjoyed this stretch. I think when I watched this the first time, because obviously I didn't watch it when it was running. I think I watched this back to back to back.
Yeah, and I'm probably in Jen, if I'm mistaken, let me know. I may have been the only person watching this when it was on for the first time.
I did not watch Enterprise when it first aired. I think the first season, and then I was in college. I didn't have time.
Yeah, I was out of college and working, and so and I was single, so you basically have nothing else to, unless you're out doing anything fun, you're watching TV. So that's what I was doing.
Yeah, so I watched these back to back to back because it was just like, holy cow, this is like,
super
this is getting intense.
It just keeps going.
It just builds and builds and builds until it's finally like, boom, everything explodes, and it's like, oh,
literally.
Yeah. So one of my favorite moments, which I know is mostly just like a ship nerd thing, I really enjoyed how they're like, oh, how is Enterprise going to be there? It's so slow, and then the aquatic ship opens up, and there it is.
Here, buddy. It's a big space hug.
Yeah, here comes the Enterprise. It was riding inside of another ship. Awesome.
Yeah.
So,
like the end of Voyager, following that Borg cube right into orbit of Earth and then blowing it up.
Yep. So that was just kind of fun because they kind of like went around our hero ship's too slow to get to the finale. All right, we'll find a way around it. So
yeah, right.
But it was
Star
like
Trek. We've got an app for that.
Yeah, but it was great how like we continue to see like the conflict between the different characters, between Degra and Trip and everyone, and then Degra dies.
Yeah. He gets murdered, so he dies while getting murdered.
He gets murdered. Yeah.
But then the weird line, then Trip's actually sad about it because by then he actually sort of made.
Because he actually like comes to realize, hindsight's 2020. Like, Degra was actually trying to do the right thing here.
Right.
And Trip starts to recognize all of those olive branches that Degra had kept on.
It's this like not all Zindi kind of.
Yeah, which I know I've pointed out multiple times throughout this season, but it's kind of the culmination of that, where you have like Trip, who has been so personally hurt by the Zindi with the death of his sister, and like is the show's embodiment of that hurt and the hatred that all of Earth has for the Zindi, and you see him in the death of another who is dying on his behalf for all intents and purposes. He comes to a reconciliation with the Zindi, and it's a very like beautiful thing. It's not like dwelt on super super long because things got to go boom.
Yeah.
But it's really well done in the sense that they followed through with the Not All Zindi arc and had the conclusion of this staunch hater realizes these are people and they can change. And if
That's
they can
what
change,
Star Trek is
so can
all
I.
about.
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah.
It's Star Trek 101.
Yeah.
Right.
And they really nailed it with that bit. So, Jen, your thoughts on no, don't spoil for the jump, because that's one's going to be for me, the after part. But what did you think of the glob altogether?
Yeah, it kept going and going. It was just high stakes. So I think, we did sort of need that breath right there.
Yeah, fair.
And let's see. I'm trying to sort of put my thoughts together on this that are maybe different from anything.
You
One
can pass.
thing, no,
You
the
can come
one
back.
thing,
Go ahead.
one of the things that I want to comment on though is that it's the reptilians and the insectoids that are the bad guys, and it's
Yeah,
kind of on the nose. And I would have liked to have seen just a little bit of a different. They look like bad guys because they're reptiles and insects, and it's like, can we
yeah,
maybe not do that?
yeah,
If
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just a
Snakes. Why
small.
did it have to be snakes or lizards?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's just a small thing, but
yeah,
the ones that look
and
more
yeah,
humanoid are
yeah,
the primates and the
and
orioles are the ones that are like on our side,
They're
and then
more
the aquatics
mammalian.
are
yeah,
right, exactly.
yeah,
So it's a
yeah,
little for me, but it's one of those things where it's of its time. I mean, it's 20 years ago now, so we can say it was of
yeah,
its time, even though in a way it feels like it was not that long ago.
yeah, yeah. Only especially to those of us who watched it when it was on.
Yeah.
The CGI to make the insectoids, I think it holds up. But again, we are, I mean, I watched this on Paramount Plus. You guys, maybe you watched it on disc or you watched it some other way. But I know that Enterprise is one of the few series that exists in HD. We have TNG in HD. We have TOS in HD. The enormous costs to put those out there is sadly maybe not likely to happen for the other series, which sucks. But Enterprise, because of the way that was filmed, I believe it was converted over. I could be wrong.
Yeah, it
Um,
still looks pretty good on.
yeah, I mean the CGI holds up. Even the bits where you had the insectoid who was interacting with Archer and threw him backwards and held a hand down on him. It was one of those like, here, John, here, Scott, react, fly backwards, squirrel around a little bit. So, yeah, I think they did well with that. But yeah, it's 0 Hour is just I tend to lump that and episodes 1 and 2 of season 4, which we won't get to talk about for about another year because we're going to have to go all the way around the horn, even though series get shorter. So we're going to get into TNG. That's where we're going to start. Next we'll go with TNG, DS9, and then Voyager, and then we'll be right back again to Enterprise. So it'll be less than a year. But I did absolutely love the super duper left field that we got. It's like, okay, the mission's over. The aquatics are going to drop us off at Earth. Everything's good. Let's hail Earth. Oh, nobody's picking up. What's going on? And right now, we think Archer is dead because he was doing his cool guy run, and then it was a cut right back to the ship, and Reed says Captain didn't make it, Trip, and that we just really think that we have every reason to think that he's dead. And so Travis and Trip are taking a shuttle pod down to Earth, and suddenly they're flying at P-51s and flying into San Francisco. And it was like I turned to April as I was watching this again, and I said, I watched this back in 2004, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? I mean, that was my honest reaction. Then you cut right to a MASH tent, and you hear German being spoken, and you're like, what is going on? And then you see the Archer is laying on one of the beds. He's all burned up, face of a German, face of a Nazi, and some weird fucking alien you've never seen
in a Nazi uniform.
In a Nazi uniform, yeah. and we'll see you in the fall. Screw you.
Oh boy.
That was that was good. They did
that
well.
Was Brandon and Braga daring Paramount to cancel them.
Yeah, hey, Paramount. And what sucks is that when Enterprise did come back for season 4, they were really hitting a lot of really great notes, but it was too late. People had lost the interest. Science fiction had become such a crowded playing field, but particularly with shows like Battlestar Galactica on the Sci-Fi Channel and stuff.
Yeah, Battlestar, Farscape, Stargate. like
There was just
SG-1 and Atlantis were starting to come out.
Yeah,
at that time,
it was time for Star Trek to take a big long vacation. So, okay, now Jen, I know that you weren't with us for the majority of this, but in your brain, thinking about over season 3, do you have? First of all, we'll go ahead and do a favorite of the pack, but then we'll potentially look at the season as an overall. Give me a favorite and a least favorite of this 6-pack.
I think. Wow, it's hard. I think Damage might be my favorite because there was all of that. It's hard when all of these kind of all run together with the exception of E squared, and like I didn't
Yeah.
hate E squared.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to say that there's a favorite or a least favorite. I think maybe I didn't love 0 Hour just because of the way that it ended with the whole 40s thing. I thought that was very bizarre.
But that's why I loved it so much. But yeah, no, I get it. That's the beautiful contrast.
You know, we've all got different opinions.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, and I would flip the script because I would say E2, while it was, the perhaps necessary speed bump going down this road, I thought it was kind of the weakest, even though it had some character moments. It was kind of like but 0 Hour was just, it was, it was very visceral. It was very like, there's explosions and people getting shot and stabbed and blown up and whatever, and I'm like, yay. I mean, it was very, guy of me to enjoy that. But the stinger, the stinger, when they get back to Earth, it's like, what? It was just, it was it was really crazy. And I enjoyed the really crazy after the very corny Archer, like running away from the explosion. I mean, it was dumb as shit, but it was okay. It was okay. So Peter, what about you?
Out of the 6,
yeah, right.
These are like the best 6 of the season. So.
I know. That's what makes it so hard, but that's the deal.
I think. Yeah. I think I'm gonna go for least favorite with.
Oh man,
stinks. Suck it up, Boimler. Just do it. I'm gonna go with the Forgotten.
Okay.
Just because some of the blow up moments were just a little. For me, sometimes I cringe a little bit when people do overly emotional things on screen because I empathize too much and I don't like it. That doesn't make it bad, but I'm just like, Trip. Secondhand embarrassment.
It just opens up your heart a little too much. We got the Grinch of Star Trek over here. Watch out!
Oh, come on.
Oh my gosh!
So just for that, I guess I'll just say that one, just because I have to pick one. But in terms of favorite, I think I might have to go with Countdown, just because of the resolution between Trip and Degra. I know, which makes it like, why'd you choose the Forgotten? Because that's where that comes up. Well, I mean, yes, but the resolution is it
because you get to see it from end to end as it plays out.
I think because of the resolution in Countdown, that might be my favorite, just because of that scene. But overall, these 6 episodes is like next to impossible to choose.
Yeah, they're all so solid and so similarly solid that it's so difficult to.
Yeah. That's why it's like, if I had to pick thing, it's like this one nitpick, and if I had to pick them, this was one scene.
You have to pick out the smaller things. And I mean, I watched these kind of all in a row too, right before this, so it's all
they kind of all smoosh. So
they do, I mean, E squared being the one exception, but it's still a good episode that has its moments for being part of this and part of this run as well.
Exactly correct. I real briefly, looking back over the season, and Jen, I understand you're probably not prepped for this because you just watched these 6, but can you think of another great episode in the season that potentially we've not talked about in this episode that stands out to you?
Let me check on that and get back to you. Let me just.
That's
kind
okay.
of-
All right, and we'll go over to Peter. Peter, how about you?
Right.
Don't forget that
not
in
make
our
sense.
episode 100 bracketology, we did have an episode from the season featured. That
We
was
did, and I'm forgetting which one it was.
It was Twilight.
Oh, yeah, it was
Twilight.
Yeah.
I did like that one, but let me
Twilight
just
is a
kind of look
fantastic
at
episode,
this.
also directed by Robert Duncan McNeil.
Robbie McDunk. Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you what, while you guys scroll, I will say that while Twilight was exceptional, I've already mentioned this episode, I love North Star. I love Old West stuff.
North Star.
You know, I grew up, in elementary school that we had those little read along book on tape, like I do a study unit. So I'd read about, here is the wagon train. And we never did Oregon Trail. That was beyond my time, but I enjoyed playing that game when it did. Like I had a DVD ROM of that. I was out of college, but I'm like, you have to ford the river. You have dysentery. So I just love Old West stuff. Yeah, you have died. All right, that was as much time as I gave you. So
that's
Jen.
fine. Similitude.
Good pick. Yeah, Sim.
That is one that stuck with me for
Sophie's
a while
choice of
after
Star Trek.
seeing that.
Yes.
Yeah,
no doubt.
Yeah,
All right,
I mean,
all right,
it's sad.
Pete.
Yeah, I was actually going to go with Similitude as well.
There you go.
It's a good episode.
It is.
Yeah.
Solid
Solid
second Twilight, but
solid second Twilight, and we're referring to Star Trek Twilight, not Twilight with Berkeley vampires. That's not happening. Not on this show.
Do not have Vulcans.
There we do not. Oh, if we weren't so late in it, I'd change the title of the episode. Maybe another time. Well, good. That takes us to the end of the road, guys. This was fun. We are going to, in our next episode, move into the first segment of season 4 of Star Trek: The Next Generation, the 1990 through 91 season. And again, something I love about having this stable of talent is that it could be all of us. It could be 2 of us. It'll be at least 2 of us because I don't want to sit here and talk to myself because then you should see somebody if you're doing that because you might have a problem. But Peter, where do people find you out there in the socials?
You can find me out on the interwebs at Petrus Aquinas in most places. I probably won't respond, but I'm there. You can also find me at ELHMK1's channel playing a Vulcan engineer in a role-playing game.
And Peter will also be running a table of Star Trek games at Grand Con here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, Labor Day weekend, where the USS Grand Petoskey will also be running a table. And we're really excited about that. It's our first occasion to be at that show. And Peter, as is your sweet spot, you're kind of running the show. So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing you do your thing.
We'll see how many. We'll see how many natural 20 failures people can have.
I don't even know what that means. But
is it the opposite of D&D?
It's a D20 system. It's the exact opposite. 2D20 is that's what it is, not 5e. So
sounds brutal. Jen, where do people find you out there?
You can find me at my Linktree, which is linktree.com/JenWatsonArt. You can find my Etsy shop, my Instagram, Facebook, and all of my other projects, which include some t-shirts and might be including some interesting writing coming up soon. Spoilers. Cool. But that's me. Linktree/JenWatsonArt.
Good deal. And you can find me over on X/Twitter as at the C3. Go ahead and spell it out. As I was pontificating, I do head up with my wife, April, the USS Grand Petoskey, one of the biggest chapters of Starfleet, the International Star Trek fan club in the world. We are based right here in West Michigan, but we do have members all over the state. I also have the privilege of being the RC Regional Commissioner of Region 13, which is Michigan and Eastern Canada. If you're a Trekker within the sound of my voice in one of those places, please find us on the social media links and at our website. We'd be happy to help you connect with other Trekkers in your neighborhood. With that, I'm going to bid you adieu. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to tell you that sharing is caring and to keep on trekking.
Be the Starfleet you wish to see in the world.
Peace and long life.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. Visit secretfriendsunite.com for more great shows, articles, news, reviews, and more. Secret Friends Unite podcasts are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and other podcast services around the world. If you'd like to be part of the conversation, you can join us on Facebook or our new Discord server, or follow at Secret Friends U on Twitter. Please subscribe to Secret Friends Unite on YouTube and visit our merch store at tpublic.com. Just search Secret Friends Unite. Thanks for listening.